Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this little guy. This is the A.G. Russell Medium Folding Gents Hunter, which, oh boy, that's 4 words. But anyways, first off, I want to thank my Patreon patrons. I went to A.G. Russell's booth at Blade Show and thought, wow, there's some good stuff here. I came home and they allowed me to just, without even a second thought, place an order for $350 worth of knives. I wanted to order it directly rather than contacting A.G. just because I wanted to see how the quality control was. But nevertheless, the Patreon patrons make that possible. So thank you for that. Next thing, size comparison. We can see here it is against the Spyderco and the Ontario Rat number 2. So you can see blade length-wise, we are actually not that far off here. It's a little bit longer in terms of sharpened blade length than the Rat 2. Then here it is against this Spyderco PM2. And then finally, here it is against another lockback sort of traditional knife. This is a GEC 99 pattern knife. And so you can see, yeah, there you go. Next thing, this guy is by A.G. Russell. That is a company, and they kind of specialize in doing a bunch of imported stuff. They tend to use lower-end steels, and so I haven't really spent much time thinking about them. But nevertheless, it's a company that's probably worth taking a look at, and so here I am taking a look at it. So let's go ahead and jump into the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly. This very interesting little knife right here. On the good side, to start with, it's got a reasonably nice blade. It has the blade itself is in 9CR13CO MOV, which is sort of a knife. It's in the vicinity of like AUS 8A. It's 440-ish. Is it the best steel ever? No. But you know what? It'll probably do for everyday carry, I guess. But nevertheless, it has a reasonably thin grind, even though the stock is a little thicker than I initially expected. But nevertheless, the blade works fine, and it is an effective tool for actually, cutting things, because that's kind of what's important here. It'll strop up very nicely. It'll be very easy to sharpen. So there you go. Next thing, the size on this guy is actually pretty good. And I mean that in a few different ways. To start with, it comes in here clearly under 3.5, so it's around 3.25, something around those vicinity in terms of inches. And it is actually reasonably compact in the pocket as well. If I fold this guy up, we can see here that it's pretty efficient. It comes in significantly smaller than the Spyderco, despite having a fair amount more blade length. So that can be a nice thing. And frankly, it's a good size for me, too. I get a full 4-finger grip off of this guy, especially if I choke up and use this little choil-ish area. So, that's good. And actually, speaking of this, the ergos on this knife are actually solid. They're not the greatest thing ever. For instance, the inside of the liners could definitely use a little bit of a chamfer there. But at the same time, they work pretty well. There was not a time where I had this in my hand and was thinking, God, this is terrible. No, it's got the palm swell here, which helps a lot. The clip is reasonably well designed, ergonomically speaking. I'm pretty happy with the ergos here. Next thing, you've got some options here. You've got you can get this Cocobolo, and this is the Cocobolo wood, at least that's the name of it on the website there. It is a carbon fiber option as well as in G10 as well. So you can get a couple of different choices here. The G10 is a nice green, and the carbon fiber, well, looks like carbon fiber. You end up paying a little bit more. This one was $85, $75 for G10, and the carbon fiber, I want to say, was closer to 100. Well, I'm not going to even make a guess. You can check their website. But it was more expensive still. But it's nice to have that option, right? Because the wood isn't going to be for everybody. Although, actually, I have to say, I like the wood. The wood here is actually a very nice thing because, in my experience, very often, there are people in the world who are afraid of knives. They don't view them as tools, but they view them as scary weapons, etc. For some reason, though, a little bit of wood on the knife tends to dissuade people from that. They feel like, oh, this is something my grandfather had, rather than something that is a big, scary tactical murder weapon in their mind. It's not rational, but then again, fears very often aren't rational. And so that can be a nice detail. That can class this knife up, both in terms of overall just classiness of carry, but also in terms of interacting with other humans. So keep that one in mind. Next thing, this guy has a very easy disassembly. Because of the way they're doing things, unlike most backlocks, which have a backlock spring in there, they actually have a coil spring that's mounted in the back here. Watch my disassembly. It's kind of a cool arrangement. But it has a very, very nice disassembly process. It was pretty easy to do, and I can't really argue with that. Most backlocks are either pin shut or a little bit of a pain in the neck. This one wasn't. So that's very nice. Next thing, this is a one-hand openable knife. I know what you're thinking. No, it's not, Nick. But in addition to a very easy pinch open, what you actually have here is the ability to, because there's a little bit of a sharpened ridge, not sharpened in the sense of cut you open, but at the top here, I'm very easily able to use my thumb to pop this guy open one-handed. This isn't a huge detail, but it actually can be very nice. And considering that most of your traditional lockbacky sorts of things are not going to be like that, having that option is good, 100%. So I like that. Or you can also do this kind of an affair with it, but, you know, whatever. Both work. So that's kind of a nice thing. Next thing, this is a true ambidextrous knife. What I mean by that is that the clip can be swapped to either side. There's another mounting slot for it over here. And in addition to that, the back lock is accessible from either side. The nick is on both sides. Look, I mean, that's beautiful. It's nice that lefties have the same approach. Next thing, it is pretty lightweight for the overall size here. It's the liners are pretty well skeletonized, etc. We're coming in at 2.07 ounces for a little bit like 3 1/4 inches. That's a very, very nice lightweight. I appreciate it very much. And then finally, on the good side, the pricing on this guy isn't bad. We're looking at 85 bucks here. With something, you know, with actual wood, with, you know, sure, I'd like to see it lower, but I think that's a fair price. That's not completely out of line. And the other thing is it's available, and a lot of your traditional style knives are really tough to get a hold of these days. So it provides a reasonable budget option for a lot of folks. So to me, that's what's good. The pricing is reasonable. It's lightweight. It's got a nice little design here overall. That's going to be very soothing to people who are afraid of pocket knives for some reason. It is truly ambidextrous with one-hand open ability on both sides. Solid ergos, easy disassembly, a couple of different finishing options and material options, that is, and a nice size and a nice blade. On the great side, to me, I like this backlock a lot. The reason I say that is because it's actually a relatively light amount of pull required here, or push, I suppose, required. It is relatively easy to open, and it is relatively easy to unlock. I don't feel like it's going to unlock accidentally on me. I tried a number of times to try and kind of pinch it in such a way that it accidentally would pop out, but I just don't see that happening. Instead, because of the way that they've done this spring, it's just very nicely dialed in. It's very easy to disengage when you need to, but it's also very easy to re-engage. It's not something that you're going to necessarily be able to do one-handedly. I mean, maybe there's a way to pull it off. I mean, I guess I just did, but that felt a little sketchy. But either way, I just like the amount of force on this backlock spring. It feels quite good. It's quite secure when the knife is closed, and I'm sorry, locked, that is. No complaints whatsoever there. So to me, what's great is that the backlock action on this is quite enjoyable. On the bad side, to start with the lock bar here, it's a little sharp. I'd like to see them kind of round that off a little bit, or maybe put a little dent in it, as you will often see on other knives, like the Spyderco Delica here. That can just be a nice ergonomic detail. Not a big deal, though. Next thing, the stock is a little bit thicker than on most traditional knives. It's not a huge deal, and it comes to a thin-ish edge, but, you know, that's a place where they could do a little better, I feel like. Next thing, it is super lightweight, that's true, but it also is super lightweight to the extent where it almost feels a little cheapy. This is unfair. I mean, at some level, that's a beautiful thing, and I see no evidence that it's actually, you know, like, for instance, I can't really crunch it or anything like that. But it is definitely, it has a very lightweight feeling that almost feels a little bit disconcertingly light. That's not a major concern, and for some people that's going to be a pro. But if you're looking for something with that heavy feeling of a classical traditional, this might disappoint you. Next thing, the wood on this guy honestly doesn't really do it for me. I mean, I like the idea of the wood, and it's not bad, but at some level it looks very heavily painted or varnished or reddened or something like that. There's some element, and I'm not claiming that this wood is artificial. I'm not making any such claim. All I'm saying is that it looks and feels a little bit less like a solid wood than some of the other solid woods you see out in the world. I don't know, there's something about the varnishing or something that makes this just feel a little bit like, huh, is that plastic? No, I guess not. And so I don't know, I'm just not a big fan of the wood that was used here. Cocobolo can be a beautiful wood, but I feel like some element of the treatment here makes it feel a little less woody than some of the woods out there. That's a really silly thing to say, but at the same time, it's my opinion. There we go. Then finally, on the bad side, the steel just isn't amazing for the price point. Look, it's okay. I mean, you see 440 close at the $100, but I never love it either. I would like to see them upgrading the steel as they're doing this, just because, you know, okay, there were better steels out there, but it's a budget company. But I'm just in this weird place where if this were $50, I would have no complaints. But at 85, it's getting to be to the point where, you know, you need to really start doing better in terms of, I mean, look, for $90, you can get like XHP in the Spyderco Chaparral. I feel like we can do better on steel at this kind of a price point. But again, if you really really, really like sharpening and want to do it regularly, yeah, they got you covered there. So, to me, at least that's what's bad, is that the steel isn't amazing at that price point. Yeah, the wood looks a little bit weird. It is super lightweight. The stock is a little thick for a traditional, and the lock bar is sharp. On the ugly front, the only ugly issue with this guy is that when I pulled it out, so I got this guy in a little, little tiny box thing. Pull it out of there. It comes in a baggie, and that baggie was kind of soaked with some sort of a yellow dye. And I don't just mean, it wasn't just like oil, unless it was a really weird oil, but it was like a dye. It was to the extent where I had to go wash my hands afterwards and do some scrubbing to get that in there. It really felt like they had applied something to this wood here that just didn't set adequately, and it was to the point where I had to use like a rag with some rubbing alcohol to wipe that off of there, because it was exuding this dye. I don't know what this factory did to get this wood, and that's what makes me wonder whether there's some kind of a dyeing involved going on here at the factory to get this color, which I don't know, but it was really ugly that I felt like a bank robber who gets one of those, you get the bag of bills and then boom, the dye bomb goes off. I was just like covered in yellow for the rest of the afternoon. That's maybe an exaggeration, but still, I'm not a big fan of that. I believe that knives should come with knives rather than knives coming soaked in dye. So, hopefully that was an aberration. I don't have, I didn't open a bunch of them, but that was not something I was particularly in love with. And so that's the ugly front, but, your mileage may vary. I really hope it does, but if it doesn't, I'll be able to see it in your review. Anyways, so there you go. This was like 3 weeks ago. That's why. Anyways, that's the ugly to me, is that it came with a dye bomb built into it. So there you go. Final conclusion. This is actually a fine little knife. I actually like it a lot more than I expected to. That's kind of a silly thing to say. I mean, I saw it at the show, and it was impressive, but it's always hard to say how something's going to perform in your actual everyday life, right? But this is fine. I like it more than I expected. It's light, it's well-sized, it's got a reasonable blade, it's got a few different options, easy disassembly. That was a very nice thing. Ambi operation, easy open and close, and honestly, it's coming in under $100. And there's a lot to enjoy about that. Of course, it's not perfect. It's got a steel that's, it's got it's got some sharp edges. The wood just doesn't feel super amazing, and it came coated in something nasty or another. But honestly, it's a solid little piece. I appreciate this knife for what it is. There are lots of other options in this kind of a price range here. I mean, if you're looking to do something modern, for $80, they'll buy you a bunch of great knives. But even in the more traditional domain, this is the area where Buck works well, the SK Blade's good fella. Lots of options from Great Eastern Cutlery, if you can actually freaking find them. But nevertheless, there are a lot of good options in this price range. But if you're looking for something that's very lightweight, that's a little bit traditional, and that won't break the bank, then I think this little knife here might be just what you're medium gents hunting for. Because it's the Medium Gents Hunter? No? Okay. Anyways, hope this has been interesting to you, and have yourselves just an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.